Hey, we're in the section of the Book of Exodus that deals with the tabernacle and the priesthood, and we started looking at this last week and looked at some of the items that were in the tabernacle and the purpose of these various items. This is the outline that we gave last week of the final chapters of the Book of Exodus. So in chapters 25 to 31, we have the instructions that were given to Moses by God when he's on Mount Sinai concerning the tabernacle, its furnishings, and the priesthood. And then in chapters 32 to 34, we have the story of the golden calf and Israel's rebellion against God and the making of the golden calf there and the consequences of that action. And then in the final chapters, chapters 35 to 40, we have the implementation of the instructions that were given. So we have the building of the tabernacle and the construction of its various items of furniture and the dedication of the priesthood, and in the final chapter, the dedication of the tabernacle itself. So by the time we get to chapter 40, everything is finished and the glory of God comes into the tabernacle. We're treating chapters 25 to 31 and chapters 35 to 40 sort of as a complete whole. So as much of the material in those first chapters with the instructions is repeated in the later chapters when these items are constructed. So we'll deal with that. We'll deal with all of that first, and then in probably a couple of weeks' time, we'll go back to look at chapters 32 to 34. So this is a reminder of the floor plan of the tabernacle. And we've seen some of the items last week which were inside the tabernacle. There was the first item that was described was the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies, this being the most holy place and the most holy object in the tabernacle with the gold mercy seat. This was where God would speak from and where God's presence was represented there in the Holy of Holies. And then outside of that was the holy place where the table of the showbread was placed, a golden table there containing the 12 loaves. And then the opposite that was the lampstand, the seven-branched lampstand with the lamps which were to remain light. And then the veils, the one veil that separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place. And it was only the high priest on one day of the year who was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement. And then the outer veil leading into the holy place. And then, as we mentioned last week, there were a series of 4 coverings that were over the tabernacle on this framework, this wooden framework overlaid with gold. So there's a lot of gold, a lot of richly decorated material in the coverings of the tabernacle. So that's a reminder of where we were last week. There's a few more items that we need to look at this evening. And the first of these is the altar of burnt offerings. Exodus chapter 27, verses 1 to 8, describes this altar of burnt offering for us. The altar was made of acacia wood, overlaid with bronze. Sometimes this altar is referred to as the bronze altar. It's referred to as that in Exodus chapter 38 and verse 30. It's described as being 5 cubits by 5 cubits and 3 cubits high. So in cubit, as we mentioned again last week, is roughly 18 inches, 1 foot 6 inches. And so this would make this altar about 7.5 feet by 7.5 feet and 4.5 feet high. Compared to Solomon's altar, which later built in the temple, Solomon's altar was much bigger. Solomon's altar was 20 cubits by 20 cubits by 10 cubits high, which is 30 feet by 30 feet by 15 feet high. There were horns, 4 horns, one on each of the corners of this altar. And this would perhaps be allowed for the animals that were being sacrificed, for them to be tied onto the altar. It's also if people were claiming sanctuary, if they went to the altar to claim sanctuary, there are a couple of examples of that, people doing that in the Old Testament. They would grasp hold of those horns there on the altar. Mention is made of the horns on the altar in Psalm 118 and verse 27. Psalm 118 and verse 27, psalm of praise to God. Blessed be he who enters in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. The Lord is God, and he has given us light. Bind the festal procession with branches up to the horns of the altar. So mention of those horns there as well. This altar also, we're told in the description, has a grating or a network that is made of bronze, but the position and the purpose of this is not very clear. It's difficult from the description given in Exodus chapter 27, to really reconstruct it or to imagine how it would actually be. But it has this grating for some purpose, perhaps a bit like the grating you would have on a barbecue. And the grating may have been resting on a ledge inside the altar. The altar is hollow, we're told. Again, we don't really know the purpose for it being hollow. One suggestion is that it may be so that it could be filled with earth or filled with stones, as was described of the altar in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 24, where God had said that an altar of earth you shall make for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen, in every place where I cause my name to be remembered. And then the following verse speaks of an altar being made of unhewn stones. So it may be that this altar was hollow to allow it to be filled with stones or with earth, but we can't be sure of any of that. There were these bronze rings on the corners of the altar so that poles could be inserted, and the poles would be used to carry the altar when it was being moved from place to place. There are various vessels and implements that were used with the altar, as verse 3 of chapter 27 mentions them being made of bronze. You shall make pots for it to receive its ashes, and shovels and basins and forks and fire pans, all its utensils you shall make of bronze. So that some of these would have been used for clearing out the ashes and clearing out the altar. The purpose of this altar was for the burnt offerings. Exodus chapter 30 and verse 28 refers to it as the altar of burnt offering there. Exodus 30 verse 28, which speaks there, refers to the altar of burnt offering. So this was the purpose of the altar, was for the burnt offerings to be offered. So it was on this altar that the daily animal sacrifices, these burnt offerings, were offered, and we can see in Exodus chapter 29, from verse 38, reference to these offerings. Now, this is what you shall offer upon the altar: 2 lambs a year old by day continually. 1 lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer in the evening. So an offering made in the morning and in the evening of these lambs. And then, of course, on the other occasions when offerings were necessary, on the different festival occasions and the different sin offerings that were made, the book of Leviticus, chapter 1, talks of some of these offerings as well. In Leviticus chapter 1 from verse 3, if his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it at the door of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. So these descriptions here of these burnt offerings that were made at various times. Other offerings were also made on the altar, the grain offerings and also the wine offerings, the libations which were poured out upon the altar. So the constant offering of these animals as sacrifices would be a reminder of the high price that was paid for the forgiveness of sins, that this was what was required, that these animals had to be sacrificed in this regular way. The next thing that's described for us in Exodus chapter 27, from verse 9 down to verse 19, is the court, the outer court of the tabernacle. And the court outside of the tabernacle itself was 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide. So that's 50 yards, roughly 50 meters long, and 25 yards, 25 meters wide. And the screen was 5 cubits high, 7.5 feet high. So the courtyard there was surrounded by this linen screen, which was hung on acacia wood pillars, which stood in bronze bases. And on one side, on the eastern side, there was an entrance, a screen, a separate screen, which was 20 cubits long. And this was more elaborate. It was made of blue and purple and scarlet stuff and fine twined linen and embroidered with needlework. So that would be the entrance into the outer court itself. The pegs for the court to support this structure, these were made of bronze. So the court then provided this enclosed area where the people could come and they could make their sacrifices or make their offerings upon that bronze altar that's located there in that court. And we notice as we move further out from the tabernacle itself, the materials that are being used are less precious. So within the tabernacle itself, the objects in there are gold, made of gold. But when we come out into the outer court, we have a bronze altar, and the fittings around the screen are made of bronze rather than gold. So the implication is that the further away you're coming from the presence of God, the less precious these items are. And then in chapter 27, verses 20 and 21, we're told about the oil for the lamp. We're told here, and you shall command the people of Israel that they bring to you pure beaten olive oil for the light, that a lamp may be set up to burn continually. In the tent of meeting outside the veil which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall tend it from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever to be observed throughout their generations by the people of Israel. The people were to bring this pure beaten olive oil for the light, for the lamp within the tabernacle, so that it would be kept alight continually. Beaten olive oil was produced by lightly beating the olives with rods, and this was a superior quality of oil to that which would be produced by crushing the olives. So again, it's indicating that the very best is to be used. The very best oil, best quality oil would be used for the lamp. And Aaron and his sons had the responsibility of taking care of the lamp, tending it evening and morning to ensure that it would not go out, that it would be burning continually. Well, we're going to leave chapters 28 and 29 till next week. Those two chapters there describe for us the priesthood, the garments for the priests, but we'll come back to that next week, and we'll move on to chapter 30 because we have another item, a couple of items to consider here. In chapter 30, verses 1 to 10, we have the description of the altar of incense. The altar of incense, again made of acacia wood, overlaid with gold. It's a small altar, relatively small altar. It's 1 cubit, so 18 inches by 18 inches square, and 2 cubits high. So about a yard, 3 feet high, a meter high, and sort of 18 inches square on the top. Again, it has horns on the corners of the altar. And there are 2 gold rings through which acacia poles, which again covered with gold, these are placed in order to be able to carry this altar. The altar of incense was located in the holy place, and it was placed before the veil, the curtain that divided the holy place from the Holy of Holies. And incense was to be burnt on this altar every morning and every evening at the same time as the priest went in to attend to the lampstand. So when he went in to ensure the oil was still burning for the lamp, he would also be burning the incense on this altar. Chapter 30, verses 34 to 38, describes for us the incense, how the incense was made. Verse 34 says, "And the Lord said to Moses, take sweet spices, stacte and onycha and galbanum, sweet spices with pure frankincense, of each there shall be an equal part, and make an incense blended as by the perfumer, seasoned with salt, pure and holy. And you shall beat some of it very small, and put part of it before the testimony in the tent of meeting, where I shall meet with you. It shall be for you most holy, and the incense which you shall make according to its composition, you shall not make for yourselves. It shall be for you holy to the Lord. Whoever makes any like it to use as perfume shall be cut off from his people." So here's the description of the incense, and only this incense was to be burned, and it wasn't to be used for personal use, so nobody could make it and use it as aftershave or perfume for themselves. It was only to be used for burning incense there in the tabernacle on the altar. Once a year on the Day of Atonement, the blood of the sin offering was to be applied to the horns of this altar in order to make atonement for the altar. We're given this information in Leviticus chapter 16, verses 17 to 19. Leviticus chapter 16, the whole of that chapter deals with the Day of Atonement and what happens on the Day of Atonement. And verse 17 says, "There shall be no man in the tent of meeting when he," that's referring to the high priest, "enters to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out and has made atonement for himself and for his house and for all the assembly of Israel. Then he shall go out to the altar," this is the incense altar, "which is before the Lord, and make atonement for it. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar round about. And he shall sprinkle some of the blood upon it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it and hallow it from the uncleanness of the people of Israel." So this altar served a function on the Day of Atonement as well as the daily burning of the incense. Incense is associated with prayer in a number of passages. So in Psalm 141 and verse 2, Psalm 141 and verse 2 says, "Let my prayer be counted as incense before thee, and the lifting up of my hands as an evening sacrifice." So maybe that this, the burning of this incense was perhaps was a symbol of prayers that were being offered up to God. In Luke, Gospel of Luke, in chapter 1, verses 8 to 10, we have here Zechariah, who becomes the father of John the Baptist. He's a priest. Um, he has a term here at going into the temple and burning the incense. And it happens at the hour of prayer. So Luke chapter 1, verse 8 says, now while he, that's referring to Zechariah, was serving as priest before God when his division was on duty, according to the custom of the priesthood, it fell to him by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And the whole multitude of the people were praying outside at the hour of incense. So when Zechariah goes in to burn the incense, all of the people are outside and they're praying at that same hour. In the book of Revelation as well, there's a connection made between the incense and prayer in Revelation chapter 5 and verse 8, describing the scene in heaven with the Lamb. When he had taken the scroll, when the Lamb had taken the scroll, the four living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and with golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song. And then also in Revelation chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. This is the opening of the seventh seal here. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to mingle with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense rose with the prayers of the saints from the hand of the angel before God. So we see again this connection between the incense and prayers there, as if the rising of the incense symbolizes the rising up of prayers to God. And we might well imagine that when the priest went into the tabernacle and burnt the incense on the altar, how that would fill the tabernacle, there, the holy place in the tabernacle, and would be quite an impressive scene. There was a problem later in Leviticus chapter 10 and verse 1, and we have the story of Nadab and Abihu, the two sons of Aaron, and the problem that they got into through burning the wrong fire or the wrong incense. Leviticus chapter 10 verse 1 says, Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire in it and laid incense on it and offered unholy fire before the Lord, such as he had not commanded them. And fire came forth from the presence of the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. So they had taken the wrong kind of fire. The priests were supposed to take fire from the bronze altar in a censer and then put the incense on that and then take it into the altar. And they had got their fire, it seems, from a different source. And they suffered the consequences of that, of their act of disobedience there. The next item we have to consider is the bronze laver, which is described now in Exodus chapter 30, verse 17 to 21. This is the final item that's associated with the tabernacle here. We're told that the Lord said to Moses, You shall also make a laver of bronze with its base of bronze for washing, and you shall put it between the tent of meeting and the altar, and you shall put water in it, with which Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet. When they go into the tent of meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister, to burn an offering by fire to the Lord, they shall wash with water, lest they die. They shall wash their hands and their feet, lest they die. It shall be a statute forever to them, even to him and to his descendants throughout their generations. No dimensions are recorded, so we don't know how big this laver was. Later in Solomon's temple, there were 10 lavers, which were made, and plus also one large, what's referred to as a C, a bronze C, which was supported on the backs of 12 oxen. So that was a much bigger um, situation there in the temple in Solomon's time. But here, I say we don't know the size of this laver, but it was to provide the water for the priests to wash, and it was placed outside of the door of the tabernacle, between the tabernacle and the altar of burnt offering. It contained this water and was to be used for washing. The priests were to wash their hands and their feet before entering the tabernacle or before ministering at the altar. So it symbolizes their cleansing, that they're to be sanctified or set apart by this action. Chapter 29 of Exodus and verse 4 says, You shall bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. So that was at the ordination of the priesthood there, that washing with water in order to set them apart, to sanctify them for this holy service that they were to render in the tabernacle. From Exodus chapter 38 and verse 8, we learn that this laver was made from bronze mirrors that belonged to the women who ministered at the door of the tabernacle. So chapter 38 verse 8 says, And he made the laver of bronze and its base of bronze from the mirrors of the ministering women who ministered at the door of the tent of meeting. We don't know exactly what the role of the women was here. Apparently they had a role in the tabernacle to minister at the door there. There is a mention of women ministering at the tabernacle later on in 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 22. But in this case, we see that Eli, who is the priest, his sons abuse their position, as we see in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 22, which says, Now Eli was very old, and he heard all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. So Eli's sons there abusing their position by laying with those women whose role was to serve at the entrance to the tent of meeting there. So in chapter 31 then of Exodus and verses 1 to 11, we have mention here of the appointment of the craftsmen who were responsible for the construction of the tabernacle. So the passage says that the Lord said to Moses, See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, for work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed with him Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan, and I have given to all able men ability, that they may make all that I have commanded you. The tent of meeting, and the ark of the testimony, and the mercy seat that is thereon, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table, and its utensils, and the pure lampstand with all its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the laver and its base, and the finely worked garments, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons for their service as priests, and the anointing oil and the fragrant incense for the holy place, according to all that I have commanded you, they shall do. So the craftsmen were responsible for making the tabernacle The various items that were designed by God, that they had to put this into effect. So God chose these men, appointed them. He says, "I have called by name Bezalel," and God equipped him for this task. Bezalel seems to be the one who's the leader of this group, and he's assisted by Aholiab. Bezalel is from the tribe of Judah. Aholiab is from the tribe of Dan. And God has filled him with the Spirit of God, we're told, and given him ability and intelligence and knowledge, all of the skill necessary to do all of these crafts. And we see from the list there uh, the workmanship that must have been involved in this, working with gold and silver and bronze with the stones and with the garments and the fabrics as well. And those who were assisting, God equipping them to be able to do this great work. It's interesting that those two names are preserved there, that we really know nothing else about these two men here, but their names are preserved here in Scripture, and they have that ability to do this task. And they are to do it just as God has commanded them. As the last part of verse 11 says, according to all that I have commanded you, they shall do. So they are to do this as God has commanded. They're not free to express themselves or their own creativity in this, but they're to follow the pattern and the design that God has laid out for them. So the tabernacle then really shows how God has provided for worship and for the dealing with the problem of sin and guilt under that old covenant. And it really foreshadows the provision that God would make under the new covenant. So we don't have all of this stuff today, and our worship today is much simpler than this. It's not based upon physical objects, but it's a spiritual worship. But these things are pointing forward to that, foreshadowing those things, and we see in this the holiness of God and this separation between God and man. That although God is present with his people, there's still that separation. That God is represented there in the Holy of Holies with that mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. But only the high priest can go there, and only the high priest can approach that, and on just one day of the year. So there's these stages of separation. The high priest can go there, the other priests, they can't go in there. They can go as far as the holy place. The people, they have to stay outside. So this series of barriers, in order to get to God, you have to go through these sacrifices and through the mediation of the high priest. And that's in contrast to how we can approach God today, that we have this freedom because of what Christ has done, that Christ has opened up this way, this new and living way, so that we can come into the presence of God with confidence and with boldness. So here's just a reminder again of the layout of the tabernacle as we've been seeing, that if we were to come in from the eastern side through that entrance, the first thing that we would come across would be that bronze altar where those sacrifices and offerings would be made. We then have the bronze laver where the priests would wash before they served at that altar or before they went into the holy place. And then going through that veil, the outer veil leading into the holy place. On our right-hand side would be the table of the showbread with the 12 loaves in the presence of God there. And on our left-hand side is the lampstand, which is burning continually with its 7 lamps. And then facing us is the altar of incense, where the incense is burnt morning and evening. And then if you're the high priest, on that one day, the Day of Atonement, you can go through that veil into the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant is, with the mercy seat and the cherubim looking down upon it. And the high priest takes with him the blood, which he sprinkles there to symbolize the forgiveness of sins, the atonement that is made for the sins of the people. So it's all very elaborate and very set out in this particular pattern, emphasizing the presence of God, but also the holiness, the holiness of God. And just again, the picture there of what it might have looked like, something like that. So next week we'll go back to chapters 28 and 29 and look at the priesthood there, and the various garments that are made for the priesthood and their service in the tabernacle as well. But we will stop